All right, good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We are tracking Hurricane Milton. It's still a Category 4 hurricane. Winds are at 145 miles an hour. It's moving northeast at 17 towards Tampa Bay, towards Fort Myers, Sarasota, and it'll make landfall sometime tonight around 11 p.m., maybe closer to midnight, depending on if it gains a little bit more momentum as it nears the Florida coast. But as you can see, it is a powerful major hurricane with wind gusts over 150 miles an hour. Pressure down to 931 millibar as most of the rain is now moving into the Florida area all across the Sunshine State. You can see as we zoom out and move into Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Miami, that's where, again, most of the heavier tropical bands of rain are now moving in. The eye wall is probably about, let's take a look, about 3 to maybe, 150 miles offshore. And again, expected to make landfall tonight around 11 o'clock on the western coast of Florida. So here's a look at a forecast. You can see by tonight around 10 p.m., that's when the eye wall starts to move on shore. Tampa Bay, Sarasota will see wind gusts over 60 to 70 miles an hour beginning, and then as it makes landfall, we will see wind gusts over that probably on the range of 100 to 130 miles an hour. The latest forecast, as we rewind that back, again, to Category 4 as we speak. Landfall tonight. It'll be over land for probably about 10 to 12 hours between Tampa Bay, Orlando, all the way to Fort Pierce on the eastern coast of Florida, remaining Category 1, maybe Category 2 status. That's winds over 75 to 80 miles an hour the entire time it's over land. Now remember, it spins counterclockwise, and what that will do is push all the water from the Gulf onshore. So you can see anywhere highlighted in pink, that's representing storm surge amounts on the range of 12 to 18 feet, probably about 15 to 18 in some of those higher areas around Sarasota and south of Tampa. And it does slightly improve the farther south you go, Fort Myers, but that is still going to be a problem for the Sunshine State. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. We'll talk more about Hurricane Milton in the coming minutes. Meantime, today's high, 95 in the city. Tomorrow, 96, going to be hot. We'll be near record temperatures. Remember, normal high in October for the city is like 85, 86. Instead, it'll be in the middle to upper 90s today, tomorrow and Friday with very light winds, 5 to 10 miles an hour. That's Fredericksburg Road, and we are clear and sunny. Maybe 1 or 2 clouds above head, but it is comfortable outside. We're registering a temperature at 78. Winds are calm. Humidity is down due to a very, very weak front that moved in last night and this morning. And you'll see the result of it, right? So a few degrees cooler than this time yesterday, but we're at 78 in the city, 80 at Lackland, 80 at Stinson, 80 at Calaveras Lake. We have some 70s in the Hill Country, 78 in Austin. So very comfortable areas we kick off our Wednesday. Here's radar. So we'll zoom back into Hurricane Milton. Again, this, what you were looking at earlier was infrared satellite, and this is radar, and just a ton of tropical rain now moving into Florida. And this is just the beginning. And what's interesting about this is there was an additional wave of tropical rain that moved through yesterday and the day before. So the ground in Florida is already wet. It's already saturated at an incoming hurricane. That's going to lead to a flooding concern. There's hurricane warnings all across the central part of Florida. You can see the eye is getting a little closer. Again, that's probably about 100 to 150 miles offshore, at least for the outer edge of the eye wall. Let's zoom back out. So Fort Myers, we'll zoom into some of these communities in western Florida. So let's see. So you can see this is the last 2 hours. And notice how many of these tropical bands of rain are continuing to pour in over the same areas at the same time. So Sarasota getting soaked right now. Fort Myers, just nonstop tropical bands of rain. And something to keep in mind with these outer bands of hurricanes, they're notorious of producing isolated tropical funnel clouds and tornadoes. So on top of storm surge, flooding, rains, tornadoes can be a huge problem in the outer bands of tornadoes. Tampa Bay, heavy rain, a little less the farther east you go towards Fort Pierce, Melbourne, and then also up to Daytona Beach, but still some good tropical moisture moving in their direction. So this is Hurricane Milton. Winds are at 145 as of the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center. Lots of heavy rain, lots of tropical downpours moving across the north and western half of Florida, all the way up to Gainesville. And again, this is where, probably between Tampa Bay and Sarasota and Port Charlotte, is where it's expected to make landfall as a Category 4 tonight. Winds over 100 miles an hour in that area. Meantime, in our area, we stay clear tomorrow morning, probably bottoming out in the lower to middle 60s. There will be a few areas in the hill country that hit about 59 to 58 in Kerrville, Kendall County, Bandera County. It's going to be a mostly clear day. Again, maybe 1 or 2 clouds overhead, but no alerts in our immediate forecast. Today, 95, tomorrow, 96, so a little hotter tomorrow for Thursday. As we move into the weekend, maybe 1 or 2 degrees cooler in the mornings, but the afternoons stay hot. I mean, every single day is rinse and repeat through Sunday, through Monday and Tuesday. Weak front moves through sometime between Tuesday and Wednesday next week. What that will do is get us a lot closer to normal. Now, as you can see, next 5 days, hot. Middle 90s, clear skies, mostly sunshine. But by the 15th and 16th, a weak front moves through, and again, we go from 95 to about 85 next Tuesday, next Wednesday. So that'll be our first decent cold front, and that'll likely bring lows into the 50s by next Wednesday, next Thursday. And then lows will be in the 50s, and then highs probably in the lower 80s. So I think next week we'll offer up some much needed relief, some beautiful, more fall-like weather. In the meantime, through Sunday, it's hot. It's decent in the mornings, but the afternoons stay clear and sunny and hot. But by the 15th and 16th, some of our models are depicting a front moving through, and this could be our first decent cold front, dropping highs into the lower 80s and lows into the 50s. So we're hoping for that. We'll go over Hurricane Milton one more time. Let's go over the stats and the latest on Milton bearing down on Florida in the next several hours. So here it is. So that's Milton. This is infrared imagery. This is not radar. Winds are at 145. It's moving northeast at 17 miles an hour. This is a major hurricane. Anything above Category 3 is considered major. Notice all the tropical bands of rain ahead of it, all being sheared apart, and this is what's weakening it slightly, but even with some level of weakening by tonight, it's still remaining a Category 4. That's what our models are saying. Here's a look at winds over the next several hours. So as it makes landfall, probably around 10 p.m. tonight, maybe closer to midnight, winds on the range of 50 to 100 miles an hour. That's the average. And then occasional gusts from this hurricane will be going over 110 to 120. And then as it makes landfall, gradual weakening, but it reemerges over water by Thursday morning. And then that's when it'll be moving way to the east, probably towards Bermuda and open waters in the Atlantic. And the most dangerous part of hurricanes is the storm surge, anywhere from 12 to 18 feet from Tampa Bay to Fort Myers. As you can see, it improves the farther north or south you go. Anywhere around that eye wall is where it's really churning water and it's pushing farther inland. And that's where it can be a peak problem between Tampa Bay and Fort Myers. Not much of a problem for that on the southeastern side of Florida, just because on that side, as Milton makes landfall, at that moment, as it moves over land, it'll push water out from the coast as opposed to inward, where it was expected to do that in Tampa Bay and Sarasota. Same thing over at Daytona Beach. It really just depends on where you are, because as it moves farther east and emerges over water, those onshore winds will turn back in from the east and move towards Daytona Beach, Jacksonville, anywhere along the northeastern side of Florida. Palm Coast, St. Augustine, Oak Hill, towards Port St. John, Rockledge, Satellite Beach, Melbourne. That's where they're expecting another round of some very minor storm surge as it weakens overland, but the onshore winds will cause some flooding, coastal flooding up into that area, and also probably into southeastern Georgia and maybe parts of the Carolinas southwest of Charleston, but probably up to about 3 feet the farther north you go, and less of a threat for coastal flooding. But again, you can see as we zoom in, Tampa Bay and anywhere between there and Sarasota on the range of 12 to 18 feet. That's between now and tomorrow. And that is going to be the most dangerous part about this hurricane. Category 4 at landfall later on tonight. Stay safe, everyone. That's has friends, family. If you're watching from Florida, that is going to be the big weather story over the next couple of days. Back here at home, obviously just hot, clear in mid-90s through Saturday and Sunday. By next week, that's when we could see some relief, more fall-like weather from Tuesday to Wednesday next week. That's when highs go back down into the 80s and then lows probably down into the 50s. So I think by far it'll be improving, and by the 16th and 17th, a lot better weather is on the way. Download the KENS 5 app. We'll have more details and updates on Hurricane Milton. Also, you can stream live on KENS 5 Plus with our local news stations in Florida. WTSP in Tampa Bay will have 24/7 coverage from Florida on Milton over the next several hours. And you can get the latest on KENS 5 Plus. Also, again, we'll have additional details on the KENS 5 app. You can download it here. Otherwise, our forecast stays dry. Stay up to date on the weather. Stay weather aware again on Hurricane Milton. 24-hour coverage from Florida, WTSP on KENS 5 Plus on the latest on Milton, hour by hour, day by day, as it makes landfall later on tonight as a Category 4 hurricane. That's winds over 130 miles an hour with occasional gusts near 140 to 150, depending on, again, the exact strength it is as it makes landfall tonight into tomorrow morning.